Hello everybody and welcome to the first part of the complete gem editor walkthrough. I'm trying to split the initial two parts up into ideally 20-ish minute videos. They're definitely going to be the longest videos out of any topic I cover in the gem engine on this channel, just because the first two parts are going to be for people who have little to no experience at all with the gem engine, so it's going to cover a lot of things quickly, but most of them will be covered on only very basic terms. So the first video is just going to be an outline around mapping and how to edit and manipulate maps, and the second part will be based on unit composition and how to get teams set up and actually get your first battle started. But obviously before you can get a battle started, you need to know how the rest of the editor works. So getting right into it, the editor, once you're in, is going to have three main modes. That's going to be the F1 mode, which is the default play area, F2, which is used strictly for mapping, and F3, which is used for mission making and battles. You will notice I do have some extra things on the side, such as Halo content and some other stuff in there as well. You probably won't have that. I do have a handful of mods installed that I will be doing videos on down the road to cover specific triggers and other concepts from those mods. You can ignore those for now, but everything else should be pretty much the same for you, whether you're playing in Men of War, Call to Arms, or Gates of Hell. Everything should be able to understand in between any of those three games. But without getting into it, we're going to be in F2, and we're going to hit New. New is just going to give us a new map, blank template, nothing past that. You can ignore all of this for now because we can manipulate all of that once we're actually on the map, so you can hit OK. Here you go, brand new map right into it. First things first, you're going to want to save. You're going to want to give your map a name. Whatever you want to name it, doesn't matter. Video map. Easy enough. Hit OK, and that'll save it there. You can look at the top right just to make sure you saved that properly. It should say your map name. One thing to keep in mind with the gem engine is that you're going to want to save your maps anywhere from every 1 to 5 minutes. You're going to get used to it if you map enough, and that is just because the gem engine likes to crash for no reason, and you tend to lose a lot of progress if you don't save fairly often. You'll only make that mistake a few times before you start to save every few seconds. To save, you can hit escape, you just hit save, it'll save whatever change you made to the map. Or if you make a change to the map and just hit Control and S and hold those at the same time real quick, then it'll save instantly. Something might pop up, something might not, but it'll do that either way. But if you want to be extra safe, don't click that, or just click that save button, you'll be good. Get right into it though. F2 mode. There are four main things. We're only going to focus on the top three for now, though. The top one's going to be your most important. That's going to be entities. Entities are going to be things that you're placing on the map that will stay to the map. Obviously, it's going to be props and stuff like that. I'm going to grab something just from construction. It doesn't matter what you grab. I'm just going to demonstrate with a couple of props. So I will just get some of these and make it easy. Now, after you place your props, obviously you select it, and you can just left click. I'm just going to get one of each. You probably also want to get one prop or whatever. I don't really care. But nonetheless, once you have your one prop, if you hold right click after you have it selected, you can move it around. You can obviously move more than one prop around. Now, if you want to copy and paste a prop, you can select it and hit Control C to copy, and in the top left it'll say copy. It'll tell you how many entities. We only have one selected. Obviously you can copy more than one. Two, it'll say copy 2 entities, but go back to one and then Control V and it'll be there, and then you can click and then it'll stay there. Nice. And you can select that again if you want to move it, line it up to the other one, select 2 maybe, and then keep going from there. Now let's say we want to rotate these. Well, I'll start with one. You just have your one prop, you hold the C key, drag your mouse, and then you can rotate it wherever you want. So I'm going to grab all these, rotate it, and then we make a nice wall. Look at that. Nice and easy. Now, if you want to make these props bigger or smaller, you can grab your prop and hold the S key and then drag your mouse up or down. This will scale it to whatever scale you want before you max it out. If you want to rotate any prop, you can hold the X key and then also move your mouse around, and that will rotate it around whatever axis you want. Also pretty self-explanatory. Past that, if you go to the constrain, this will be important for a future part, but to keep in mind, if you hit none, that means that if you edit the terrain and say we make this terrain higher, this prop will stay exactly where it is. If you have ground, that means if we make like a hill here, these props will move with the hill and move up. That might not make sense now, but it'll make sense in a few minutes once we get to height maps and that aspect of the editor. But for now, this is about it, so we can save that, put these wherever we want, and that's about it. Entities, it will be hard at first to find certain things that you want. You'll have to spend a considerable amount of time just learning where things are in the editor and how to find what you want. You can always search down here with certain things. The name will always be up there. Some props do have text mods on them, and a text mod will just change it based on it won't change the prop itself, it will change the actual design or texture. So if we select all these, or we'll just select one to start, you can scroll down until you find text mods. There should be a drop down, and there'll be a couple different things you can select. You can use scroll wheel to also go through there if you're hovering through them. And there may or may not be text mods for certain props. So if you don't see a drop down for certain props, that just means they don't have a text mod. You can select more than one if they have the same text mod. If they don't, then it'll be a little weird, but because some might change and some might not. Won't break your game though, but you can have fun with those. If you want to change the color of a prop, a little more advanced, don't recommend doing it until you get fairly comfortable with the editor. But if you scroll down more, you can go to color, and then you can pick different things. What this normally is used for is if you want like more of a warmer color. You wouldn't normally go too drastic with like one of these. You'd go up here maybe, and then just use the slider to get whatever color you kind of sort of want. And so forth. Pretty straightforward, nothing too crazy. But keep that in mind if you want specific colors. Now, moving on from that, that's going to be the basics of props. If you want to find out where trees and all are, I may as well just tell you. It's obviously going to be flora, and then you can mess with these from there and rotate, scale, and whatever not. Moving on, though, since we're going to make this quick, we do have the second one, which is land. This is going to be the longest part of the video just because it covers majority of actually editing the map. So first we're going to be in heights. First thing we're going to look at is the slow and fast slider. So slow and fast is going to be adjusting how quick you're editing the terrain. By the way, if you want to make this poly bigger or smaller, there's going to be your brush size. Use the plus and minus key on your numpad. You will have to use the numpad for majority of the editor when it comes to switching teams and whatnot in later videos, as well as obviously brush size. So if your plus and minus is not working, note it has to be the numpad one unless you change your key configurations. But for the actual height, if you left click, it will increase the height. If you right click, it will decrease it. Obviously, this can be a little fast, especially if you have fast all the way up. It's going to go straight to the stratosphere and look ugly as shit. So we can scroll this down probably to around 15%. It'll be a little more slow and easier on you to make things. But obviously you can put it on whatever speed you want. I'm not your mom. However, just keep in mind that if you're trying to make a hill, this will be the most common mistake new mappers make when creating a map. They will think they created a masterpiece, and then you will see it looks super rugged and jaggy, which may work for some of you, but for those who want to smooth it out and maybe give it a more realistic approach, here's how you do that. You hold the shift key and left mouse at the same time, and then drag your brush around. And as you can see, it will slowly begin to smooth things out. And as soon as you let go of left mouse, that's when it makes most of the, it like saves the change. You'll see it'll let go in a second. And then you'll see the texture changed slightly, and that's how you know it's saved. You also can move up the fast if you want to smooth quicker or slower. Another tool you can use that most people will ignore unless you get a little more into the nitty-gritty part of mapping is this height map box. You can click that. And what this does is it lets you more easily visualize what the height map is looking like on your map. This is mainly used to know what is flat and what doesn't have any height map to it. So you have like slight indents over here. You can see those just because they're going in, but if the height map were off, it might be a little hard to actually tell anything's over there. Doesn't seem like a big deal now, but if you care enough about specifics of your map, then you'll definitely care about that tool. So don't need it by any means. Most people ignore it, but if you want it, it is there. Moving on to, actually real quick, there is the fixed height map. Cannot forget that. So if you want a specific height, this will be going off the Z scale. You can type whatever you want. Just kind of mess with it. I'll do 150. It'll set to 150. Wherever you put the brush will be exactly 150. You also can do negative values as well. Let's say negative 100. There we go. Be careful with negative values. Once you start getting below negative 100, the camera can't get any further down than where it is right now. So if you go further than that, It gets a little hard to zoom in if most of your map is made that deep. It's always easier and better to make your map higher up than lower down. It's not impossible to do the other, but it's easier on you. So if you're doing any maps like that, just keep that in mind. And once again, you can smooth these out to however you like. Okay, that's pretty much it. If you ever have any issues with height maps, then you can always hit clip height map, and that should fix any issues if you make a height map and say infantry or any humans can't run around and it gets buggy. Always resort to your clip height map button, and that may or may not fix it. Moving on, we'll go to colors, and this will be quick because this is the most useless tool in all the gem editor. So colors is the easiest way to destroy your map and hate it forever. Pretty much what it does is it colors the ground, which seems cool at first until you realize you can't undo that, because if you right click, it does the opposite value color, which in this case is like an indigo, and then you can never get rid of that color no matter what you do. This color will always be on your map. So unless you're either trying to ruin your map or are very careful, just never use this tool. Never. Moving on, polygons. This is going to be what actually builds your maps. This is why I said we could ignore some of the stuff at the beginning when we click the new map. Like the map size, you can adjust with the polygon tool. If you click wireframe, you can see real quick the default polygon size is 2. If you hit level up in the top left, you'll see it goes to 4. And then higher from there, or you can go down more. I wouldn't go below 0.5 because the game starts to get very buggy and can crash because it gets a little hard on your PC. For instance, if you go to 0.5, it creates smaller polygons. The reason that these will come into play, most of you can ignore changing the level button unless you're doing very detailed maps with hills and whatnot. And a quick example of this would be if I were making a smaller hill over here for whatever reason, you can see it's very pointy. And even if you try to sharpen that out or smooth it out, it's still going to be pointy. And that's because there's only 2 polygons making up each side of that. While if you were to do a smaller one over here towards, where was it? Towards the 0.5 size polygon, as you can see, it'll be a little better and smoothed out. Obviously not as pointy. It doesn't look too cute just because this is a rough example, but nonetheless, it should give you a pretty good idea. So for the most part, stick to 2. But real quick, if you are using a smaller polygon tool, you will see there'll be some fragmenting around. The easiest way to fix that is just to go back to the 2 size and then just go around the circle until you sort of even it out. And those weird clips go away. If they don't go away, then your next best bet is just to go down 1 to an in-between size, like one that's in between 0.5 and 1, and then just try to make that like the bridging polygons between the 2. But 2 should do it. Once again, though, you probably won't need most of that. However, if you are expanding your map, this will be what you use the polygon tool for. Once again, you don't need wireframe up. I just use some of those tools to make it easier for me to visualize things. But say your polygon tool 2, this is how you can make your map bigger. If you left click, you can keep drawing your map for as far as you want. Right click, you can remove it. Pretty easy. So that is how you can edit your map and make it bigger, and that's why you can ignore the map size button when you're creating a new map, because you can always add on from wherever you start. So that will make your life way easier, and obviously you can expand it any direction you want for as much as you want until you hit the engine limits, but that's pretty hard to hit. Moving on real quick, textures. Textures, pretty important. You're going to want to hit add. The default will be the grid, but your texture, loosely speaking, is just going to always be sets of 2 textures. So you can left click on one of these and then select whatever you want. I will get some sort of rock texture. You can ignore these weird ones that are like blue or black. That's just something that makes the texture work with its specular values and other things, I believe. But pretty much just look for one that looks normal and use that. Ignore the weird ones. Makes your life way easier. And then you'll select a second texture if you want. You don't have to, but most people will. And the second texture you select is going to be the one that blends per se with the other, which I will show an example of what that means. So if we were to left click will give you the left texture, right click will give you the right one. So we'll just put some of this down. And now let's say we want some sand on top and at the base. Nice and easy. Okay, so also as you can see, if you put textures over this color stays there, which is another reason why it just ruins your map. So don't use the color tool. All right, so once you got these textures down, let's say you want a new texture. Or before we move on to that, you also can change how much of one texture you have. So what I mean by that is the slider bar here. If you put it in the middle, around 50%, that means when you left click, it's going to be 50% of the left and the right texture, just like that, if you want like a mix of that rock and that sand. The other way to do that without messing with the slider, if you just want to do your own creative tool, is just sort of, instead of holding left click, you sort of like tap it around to get your own mix and put it in different spots so it's always different. That's how I do it. I don't normally use the slider, but you can use whatever you want. Just play with it until you get something that you like. But if you want more than 2 textures, which presumably you will, then here's how you do that. So the first thing you need to do is decide, one, what your new texture is going to be touching. And what I mean by that is, let's say we're going to have a different sand texture mixed in with this one. So that means we're going to be keeping this sand texture. So we're going to click this one, hit add. And now, because our new texture is going to be touching this already existent sand texture, we want to keep this here, and we want to change the rock because we're not using that. So we will come back. We will hit sand. Nope, we're going to miss that. Sand, find a different one. And then there you go. As you can see, it works just fine. You can put that there. Now, keep in mind, if you get too close to the rock texture, this sand texture isn't made to pair with the rock texture per se. So if you get too close, it's going to get all fragmented like that and get a little ugly. If you make any mistakes, though, always remember Control Z. And you can just undo whatever you want if you ever make too big of an oopsie. Just don't save, don't Control S before you Control Z. Otherwise, you can't go back. Never mind, I just lied, you can. But if you do too many, if you get too far into your map, I think the gem engine only saves up to like 20 to 30 Control Zs before you can't undo anymore. So keep that in mind, you can't undo a lot of stuff. But most of the time, you won't make it that far before you notice a mistake. Now, keep in mind, if we didn't do this, and we didn't have this texture set up where it was just this one changing, let's say we go to grid and just change, we'll just put that sand texture here. If we then tried to put it, let me just make this over here for a better example. So as you can see, this sand is now with grid and not with the desert sand too. If we tried to put that here, it's going to do this. Obviously not going to be blended like this one. So that's why you need to have that second set. So you can just mess with that. Slow and fast tool also works for those. You can hit fill map if you also want to do that to make your life easier. If you just want to start with something, you can swap them. Either or. It's honestly all up to you. Although keep in mind, if you hit fill map, it will change the entire map to those 2 textures. Moving on, terrain's going to be pretty quick. Don't need this most of the time, but by default, it'll be ground. The only thing you may or may not use at the beginning is going to be no pass human, and that just means humans won't be able to pass it. So let's say humans, I don't know if they'll actually be able to do this, but I will give it a shot real quick. Let's see, can they get to the top of this? Okay, they can't, it's too steep. But sometimes they can get up steep stuff. So if they could run up that, then you can hit no pass human, and then just draw with the brush, left click to put on, right click to, nope, I lied, just go back to ground. And then you can adjust it if you made too big of one. And then the humans, if they could have gone up there, they won't be able to now if you were to try to select them and go through there. As you can see, the pathing will try to bring them through there, but they won't be able to. So that is that. You can ignore most everything else until you get to water, but we'll deal with oceans and all in a further video. Grass, very self-explanatory. You can choose whatever grass you want. Left click to put it down, right click to remove it. Right click's a little slow. You can use the slow and fast slider if you want that to be quicker. I only put the fast all the way up when it comes to removing things, just because even when it's all the way down here, if you right click to remove, it can take some time depending on what you're trying to do. But obviously you can mix and match grass however you want. It's up to you. Keep in mind though, as soon as you go back to F1 for the actual play mode, most of the grass will disappear. And by most, I mean only a handful, but that's just because the game does not render it all in when you go back to F1. So keep that in mind, some will go away, but it'll pop back up when you go back to F2. Next, ocean. I will quickly go over this, but more of the ocean specifics of how to edit it and make them look better will be in another video. You can enable it with enable, and then you'll see you get an ocean with our guys drowning there. Nice and easy. If you want to change what level the ocean's at, you can go here to set water altitude. And if you want to increase that, let's say 100, hit enter, super high. Once again, you can use negative values, negative 100, It's way too low, but negative 50, as you can see, it'll get a little lower. If you want to change the color and pollute it a little bit, you get a pollution color, change it to whatever you want. Let's say you want it to be like a toxic color. But pollution factor, let's say 1. 1 is the max. It'll be super green. Probably not going to want that. But if you just want like a little hue, you can put decimal values. Let's say 0.2. Just make it a little green. Or maybe even something smaller like 0.07. I don't know. Just like a little hint of something gross if you're going for like swamp water. But you obviously can mess with that as you want. Environment mode for sea, lake, and river does not matter right now because that will be covered in a different video with more specifics of how to edit the ocean and add waves and whatnot. Past that though, the last thing we will hit is going to be the clip. This will happen when you use environments. Environments are opened with F6, and then this is how you make most of your maps look pretty and come to life. There will be a video covering how to make your own environment and adjust them, but for now you can find whichever one you think is deemed cool. So for the environment, this is where the clip brush will come in. As you can see, when we added our polygons over here, if we go to F1, it's fogged out. You can't go over there. So to change that, you're going to click Show Map Borders, and these lines will pop up. To select these lines, you're going to click Preset first, and that'll allow you to select them. And if you move your mouse over, you'll see it goes from white to green. As soon as it's green, that means you can select a line. There's going to be 3 different sets of lines, blue, pink, and then the yellow and green are together. I'll explain each of these. So the blue one, I might be mixing up with the pink, but you always want them in the same spot anyway, so it doesn't matter. I believe the blue is for the camera, and this means that wherever the blue line is, when someone's in the game, the camera cannot pass that line for if somebody's actually playing the map. The pink, people grab, is for infantry or camera, interchangeable, but once again, you just always want them in the same spot. Makes it easy. This will mean that any of the infantry on the map cannot pass this line, so vehicles or humans won't run outside of it. This is their boundary. The camera boundary is obviously just for the player. I can't seem to select it. Sometimes these lines are really weird to grab. The most important one is going to be yellow and green because this is the fog. The yellow is where the fog starts, and the green is where you cannot see past anymore. This is where the fog's at 100 and everything past. So if we want this to be playable, we'll just grab that, and then the green line is what you want to put on the edge of your map, ideally. And then once you click Preset again, it'll be fixed. And you can uncheck Show Map Borders, and then you have a bigger map. Obviously, you can edit that on all 4 sides to change your map as need be, but that is how you will change that. So that is it for the map editor basics when it comes to editing and map and actually adjusting terrain and whatnot. Try to keep it short, but part 2 will probably be a little lengthy as well. Recommend any specific concepts you want to see down below. And if you want, go ahead and check out my main channel in the description. But without further ado, I will see you in the next one.